Welcome to MLT 101, Human Anatomy. My name is H1 Barnes, and our lesson topic is the respiratory system. The function of your respiratory system is to deliver a constant supply of oxygen, O2, to all the cells of the body, and to remove carbon dioxide, CO2, which is a waste product of cell metabolism. A common misconception is that carbon dioxide is entirely bad and needs to be eliminated completely. That is false. Carbon dioxide is an important component in the regulation of the pH of your blood. You don't want to have too much, you don't want to have too little. It helps balance the acid-base balance in your blood. These tasks are accomplished with the help of the circulatory system through respiration. Respiration permits the exchange of the gases oxygen and carbon dioxide between the blood and the air, and involves two processes. You have external respiration that occurs in your lungs and internal respiration that occurs in your cells. External respiration occurs as a person breathes in and air travels to the lungs, where oxygen from the air will enter the bloodstream in the lungs. At the same time that that's occurring, carbon dioxide will leave the bloodstream in the lungs and is breathed into the air as the person exhales. During internal respiration, oxygen leaves the bloodstream and enters the cells in the tissues. Carbon dioxide from the cells enters the bloodstream. Your circulatory system is the means by which oxygen will be transported from the lungs to the tissues, and which carbon dioxide is transported from the tissues to your lungs. This function is called gas exchange and transport. During normal external respiration, O2 and CO2 are able to diffuse from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration through the walls of the air sacs, the alveoli in your lungs, and the capillaries of the lungs, which are very thin-walled in the lungs. The blood in your lung capillaries is low in oxygen and high in carbon dioxide, so the oxygen from the alveoli in those air sacs will diffuse into the blood in the capillaries, while carbon dioxide from the capillaries will diffuse out of the blood, out of the capillaries, into the air that's contained in the alveoli, those little air sacs in your lungs. Carbon dioxide levels play a major role in the acid-base balance of the blood. If your CO2 levels increase, your blood pH decreases. CO2 acts as an acid in your blood. It decreases pH, becomes more acidic. This can lead to a dangerous condition called acidosis. The body responds by increasing the rate of respiration, called hyperventilating, to increase the levels of oxygen. Prolonged hyperventilation can cause a decrease in CO2, which will result in an increase in pH, makes your blood more alkaline, and a condition called alkalosis. Something that can be done to help counter this, and is commonly seen in movies to calm people down, is when someone breathes in and out of a bag so that they can recapture that CO2 that was exhaled and not lose too much of it. During normal respiratory function, the bicarbonate ion acts as a buffer to keep the blood pH within a steady range, from 7.35 to 7.45. The structures of your respiratory tract include your nose, your pharynx, your larynx, your trachea, your bronchi, and your lungs. Your lungs include the pleura, the pleural space, and the alveoli. Together, these structures form your respiratory tract, a continuous pathway for the flow of air to and from the air sacs in the lungs. The human body has two lungs. Your right lung has 3 lobes. Your left lung has 2 lobes. The reason for this is that in the center of your chest is your heart. Your heart leans, it tilts slightly to the left and takes up more space on the left side of your chest than it does the right side of your chest. That leaves you with 2 relatively large lobes on the left side and 3 relatively smaller lobes for your lung on the right side. So your left lung has 2 lobes, your right lung has 3. Your lungs are encased in a thin, double-layered membrane called the pleura, a tiny space between the layer that covers the lungs and the one that lines the inner thoracic cavity is called the pleural space or cavity. This can become relevant in battlefield trauma where if somebody begins to bleed, let's say they got shot and they have a penetrating wound that goes through that cavity, air or blood can fill that pleural space, and this will cause the lungs to no longer be able to fill. A person will breathe in, they'll breathe out. As they breathe out, their lungs contract, they don't take up as much space. That remaining space gets filled with air coming in from the bullet or the stab wound, or blood leaking into that space, and the next time they breathe, there's no longer as much space for them to take in another breath. This is treated with something called a needle thoracentesis, or a needle decompression, often called a needle D. The alveoli are tiny air sacs in the lungs, where the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place. The walls of the alveoli are a single layer of squamous epithelial cells. They're surrounded by a thin membrane. The thinness of the walls is important. It allows gases to pass between the alveoli and the blood in the tiny capillaries that cover them. Because the thin walls would ordinarily be prone to collapsing, because they're one cell thick, that's tremendously thin, tiny, they have a coating of fluid called surfactant on them, which lowers the surface tension on the wall and helps to stabilize them.